And we are live. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to Woman Warrior Wednesday. My name is Ruby Garcia. I'm a leadership and life coach. I am super excited to be here with all of you today. Some of you may remember that I was running Woman Warrior Wednesdays last year, and every Wednesday I would bring on a woman that was making impact in the community, or that had some type of expertise, and just kind of showcasing different talent. I feel like there's an underrepresentation of women, especially women of color and Latina women. And so really wanted their voices to be amplified and heard. And so these women actually inspired me to bring back Women Warrior Wednesday because they were so powerful. I met them through a leadership program, and they put together an awesome podcast called Comadres, Cocktails con Comadres, right? That was a Cocktails con Comadres, and we had a wonderful discussion, and I just wanted to keep the conversation going. So we're here today to talk about identity and how identity kind of informs how we show up in the world. Identity is kind of foundational when you think about, some of your background, your culture, where you grew up, maybe religion, all of these kind of, your environment, all of these different things influence your identity. And a lot of your identity is probably even really formed in your earlier years than your later years. And so as we were having this conversation, we were talking about Latinidad and how there can be really diverse experiences, and it can be very complex, and there's different layers of it. And also how even within ourselves, sometimes our identity evolves. So we welcome you to, ask questions and just engage in the chat. So without further ado, I want to introduce my panel here today. Actually, I'll let them introduce themselves. If Nicole, you want to get us started, and here's what I'm going to ask you is, tell me, introduce yourself. Tell me just a little bit about your how you identify, and tell me a little bit about your cultural background and where you're from and where you are now. Oh, I can't hear you, Nicole. Oh, can't hear you. I'm going to go to Vivian while you do that, and then I'll come back to you, Nicole.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Vivian May. I'm based out of Louisville, Kentucky, and I do marketing for a spirits brand based out of Louisville. So I've been doing that for a little while now. And in terms of my personal identity, I very much embody the very familiar phrase of ni de aquí, ni de allá. I am not from here, not from there. I was born in the U.S. My dad is American. My mom is Panamanian. So I learned Spanish at a younger age, and that's kind of where my identity lies. To most people, I would say I'm Latina, but born in the States. And I'm really excited to be here. Thanks, Ruby, for having us.
Thanks, Vivian. Mm-hmm. Nicole?
I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
You're back.
Excellent. Excellent. Sorry about that. Well, I'm Nicole Sandoval. I work in the insurance industry. I identify as a very white cultured Latina. I was born in North Texas and moved back to San Antonio with my family, where I currently reside. But I went back to school in North Texas, finished my education there, but still call home San Antonio. So,
yeah. Nice. Lauda, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Laura Almanza. I'm a lead analyst at Discover. And you're like, probably, what does that even mean? Well, that means I manage projects, and these projects are for agent applications and systems. So basically, we strategize on how to on ways to collect and recover from our losses on personal and student loans. Most importantly, I identify as a Latina. I am a first-gen born Mexican. I was raised in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. I've always enjoyed computers, so shout out to Encarta 95 in SimCity. But I grew up in a household of 6 in a small ranch house, learning to deal with 6 different personalities. I appreciate the peace and quiet now. But besides that, I enjoy fine dining.
Nice. I'll be in Chicago next month. We'll have to go out to some fine dining.
Definitely.
Paula.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
My name is Paola Toledo. I was born and raised in Peru, but I have been in US for the last 10 years. I'm currently in Chicago, so if you come, Ruby, please also let me know. I work at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago as a credit analyst. I assess the financial performance of different financial institutions, credit unions, banks, community development financial institutions, to provide risk ratings to these institutions in the credit department. So I have been with the bank for the last 9 years. As I say, I was born and raised in Peru, so I identified as 100% Latina. And I'm very passionate about my culture, the food, traveling, and sports. I love to watch and play sports a lot. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
What's your favorite sport, Paula?
Play volleyball, beach volleyball, and to watch, I would say, football or soccer. I don't know how you want to call it, but the World Cup is coming, so I'm very excited.
Okay, nice. And last but not least,
Hi,
Zoraida.
good afternoon. Hi, Ruby and the ladies. My name is Ziraida Rodriguez. I born and raised in Puerto Rico. My identity is Latin and Puerto Rican. Very, very proud. All the time speak about my culture. I'm so happy where I come from. I moved to the United States 12 years ago permanently. So right now I'm in Durham, North Carolina, working for a pharmaceutical industry. Um, I'm in the quality department for a manufacturing of vaccines. Um, in the work, I also use my identity. I'm very proud. I have other Latin and Spanish speaker, so I use that environment also to reinforce my culture and my language too when it's allowed. So I'm very happy to share this time with you guys.
Awesome. And I can't believe we haven't gotten together because I'm in Chapel Hill. So we have to make that happen.
I know, yes.
I've totally forgotten that. So all right, awesome. Well, I want to talk a little more about we're talking about identity today and how that identity can kind of influence us, especially, for a lot of us. I think they mentioned a lot of first gen. I'm first gen too. Stephanie's giving you a shout out, by the way, Sadaida. She says we're so grateful for you. But and Vivian, what you said totally resonated because it was something that I shared this morning in my LinkedIn post was the ni de aquí, the ni de allá, right? Kind of feeling like I'm not from there, not from here. Like, where do I fit in and where do I belong? And I grew up in I grew up in the west suburbs of Chicago in a middle to upper class neighborhood that was primarily conservative, primarily white. When I lived there, like, I knew all the Hispanics in my school, right? Because we sat, we sat at the Mexican lunch table because we were all Mexican. So we sat together and it was just really, and it's funny because I don't even know if I really thought about it back then, but it's more like looking through the lens that I have now and the wisdom I have now and the know-how that I have now to see how those kind of experience is shape me. So I'm curious for each of you, when you think about identity and now you think about, being a first gen Latina successful in the workplace, like how did some of those experiences in your life show up for you in the workplace? And it could be good experiences or negative experiences. I know for me, I feel like there's a little bit of both. There are some ways in which it has served me really, really well. And then there are some, I just got done teaching a negotiations class, and there's some mindsets that were kind of passed down onto me that kind of hindered me, right? And part of that was like, being able to ask for what you need, because my mom always taught me, just work hard, keep your head down, and just kind of stay out of the way. And I don't think that it was meant to deter me, but I had to really overcome that mindset in order to accelerate in my career. So I'm curious for each of you, and it could be, like I said, good. And I hate to even label it that way, right? Because we can learn from those situations. But what are some of the experiences that you have had that have informed the way that you show up in your career? And I'll just,
I was say I can go because you kind of called it out, but yeah, no, I think at least for me, I'm younger in my career, so I'm still very much kind of junior in the sense that I'm still building up my leadership capabilities and all of that. So at least for me, born and raised in the States, English is my first language. I agree with you, Ruby, that I don't know that I noticed a lot when I was growing up, just because it was just kind of the reality of my situation. I grew up in Illinois, not Chicago, but central Illinois. So similar in that sense, where most people assume if they know a Hispanic person or Latino person, you probably know them too. That was a lot of my situation. But no, truly, I would say in the workplace, a big piece for me has always been just kind of, I guess, not realizing that a lot of the characteristics that I have just in my personality aren't uncommon if you're around fellow Latina women. And so that's, at least for this group, that's where I felt like found kind of a place to fit in a little bit, where we had a similar background and had that mentality going into work of put your head down, don't brag, be confident in yourself, but don't show that outwardly. That's something I've always kind of struggled with personally. And I think I always kind of thought that was maybe a generational thing. And I think it is. I think imposter syndrome comes through oftentimes for younger versus maybe more senior roles. But especially within Latina women, it's something I think I've seen more and more. So that right away, at least, was the first thing I thought of. I know that's a conversation this group has had many times, where we feel like maybe we shouldn't go out for the next, promotion, or maybe we're not worthy of it because we don't check every single box, and realizing that actually, I mean, your work speaks for yourself, but you have to be your best advocate.
Yeah, absolutely. Be your own best advocate. We do such a good job advocating for others, and sometimes we don't do it for ourselves.
So, Ruby, I can speak from me a little different perspective because I grew up, I'm born in Puerto Rico. So when I moved to the state first, I work in the state back and forward as a consultant, so not living directly here in the state. But it was a shock, the language. Even I study English, even I consider myself, can I speak? But in that work environment, the expectations, and I think that now looking back, my expectations were very high. So I was very afraid to speak. I always apologize to say a bad and incorrect terms or not having a lot of vocabulary. So that in my career, starting my career it was very important at that time because it was preventing me to look at all the greatest thing that I was doing in the work environment. So I need to have coworkers, and I'm grateful for that because I have great coworkers, great mentors that tell me, no, you don't need to apologize. We understand that English is your second language. it's okay. You are Latin. It's fine. So, and that helped me during now where I am, that I'm blessed from my team. My boss Stephanie is connected, and they support me. And I still sometimes I'm like, well, probably I don't have the best vocabulary, and they know you are awesome, that you are able to speak to language, that you are able to continue show us the difference in cultures and be able to accept everything and it's okay and learn from that is great. So I think that I have a both, like you say, not so grateful or not so good. But at the end, right now in my career, I think that helped me to understand who I am, continue be proud, and continue to tell and teach others and say to others, no, it's okay. It's fine. You're going to be successful is on your work.
Yeah, beautiful. Nicole, I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, you know, the for me, this has been a very big culture shock. Because growing up, like Vivian, I grew up in the States. My English is my first language. Um, I was assimilated into the white culture. And with that being said, I was sheltered from a lot of experiences that first gen Latinas have in the discrimination or whatever that looks like, in their experiences. So when I first experienced, oh, well, they had to interview you. You're, you're Hispanic and you're a female. And I was like, wait, what do you mean they had to interview me? It was, it threw me back. So having those experiences and seeing it from the other side was was something that I didn't know how to handle. And until I started diving in personally into my culture, into asking my parents, what made you make the decision to assimilate us into these different avenues, and getting, having them tell me it was because we wanted you to be competitive with your peers. We didn't see you guys as just Hispanic females. Um, so it was a it's a journey that I'm still on, because I see it here and there, but it's definitely kind of shell shocking. Excuse me.
Yeah. And I got up because you made me think. I've been reading this book. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, or y'all. I'm trying to get out of the habit of saying you guys. Y'all have heard of this, but it's "You Sound Like a White Girl" by Julissa Arce, and she's written this book, and it's called the subtitle is "The Case for Rejecting Assimilation." And it's been very eye-opening. I highly recommend it if anyone likes to read. It gives a lot of history that we're not told in school, and um, that is really kind of held back or withheld is the better word, withheld from us in regards to our own history, and how she actually is from Texas. The author is from Texas, and she writes about she wrote another book. I can't remember the name of it, but she was undocumented, and she worked on Wall Street as an undocumented person. And since then, she has really kind of she left that world and has become an author, and is writing about like our need not to assimilate. So I definitely can relate to that, Nicole, and I think probably Vivian, you can too, based off of your experiences, where you kind of feel like this is the way that you do things to kind of fit in. And at the same time, I also think that that's why sometimes, in my experience as a coach, that's why women end up feeling so disconnected from themselves too, is because, we've kind of been in many different ways taught to, or conditioned is a better word, conditioned to show up in a certain way. And then at the same time, that means self-abandoning parts of ourselves. I'm curious from Laura and Paula, whether any of that resonates, and maybe how that's shown up for you in terms of, how you've shown up either personally or professionally.
Thank you, Ruby. And something that Nicole opened it by saying it was a cultural shock. I remember when I joined the bank, it was my first job in US 8.5 years ago. So I didn't know anything. And I came, with values of commitment, hard work, loyalty, caring for others that my family, that I grew up with in my family. So I try to learn, the American culture as well, the corporate values as well, right? And see how different sometimes they are. But I think with the values that I brought, from my family, it made me be considered as a good team member. I believe I am a good team member. They can say it as well, but at the same time, something that you said, we sometimes care about others more than for ourselves, right? We are good sponsors of everyone at work, talking good things about them, but we cannot be our own sometimes, right? We cannot say, yes, I did that. Yes, I did a great job. Yes, it's very difficult because also humility has a play there. You grew up with those values and yeah, you did it, but it's not a big deal. You did it. It's your job. And sometimes you need to learn because in the corporate world, you have to say it. You have to say what you did. Because sometimes people don't realize, and I think it is the way it is. So here, I think the corporate values are something that I am learning still, which are good. I don't say they are bad, but it's just sometimes there is a conflict with my own. I just try to reconcile and work with both together because I think the values that I brought from my family are good. I just need to learn how can I play with the others as well, with the other values that, be a good sponsor of yourself as well. As Vivian said, sometimes we apply to jobs when we check 100% of the boxes. We don't feel we are ready. So yeah, probably those are the things that I can share.
Yeah, and Paula, you make such an important point that we don't have to pick one or the other side. It's not either these values or these values, but that it can be a both and, right? Like I can still really be family centric and family be a major priority. And the way that shows up in the workplace is by being a great team member, right? And caring for my team and thinking about the team's needs and in all of those ways. Like I don't have to choose to give up one in order to get the other, but I can actually have both and both can serve me. Thank you for sharing that. Lauda, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so for me, I'm just like Nicole and Vivian. My parents, they taught me some Spanish, but they did not want me to learn a lot of Spanish because my sisters and my brother were put into ESL classes. So they wanted to avoid that. So it was more of like a survival tactic, if you think about it, that you have to learn the language, you have to know in order to survive. And that goes along well with what Paola was saying with when she started her job, when she first started at the bank, she wasn't well versed or well aware in what they do, and that's like another language too, learning different terms, learning it just business acumen, and also with that I don't know, I mean, just like everyone else says, you gotta just I don't know, have a growth mindset and not be ashamed of yourself and just speak up, respond responsibly, reasonably, and with assertiveness, but not mean.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and I've kind of heard a couple of you kind of touch on this, is this, and you haven't used this word, but this is kind of the underlying thread, and I kind of want to shift this conversation a little bit different directions. You've been talking about, we've talked about as Latina women, that we're very conscientious of everybody else's needs, right? And we can advocate for other people. And a lot of this is really even subconscious conditioning. And there's what's called Marianismo, which is really kind of like the history is derived from the Catholic Church and religion. And a lot of it is kind of the selflessness, right? It's putting the family first. It's taking care of everyone else. It's almost like the more of a martyr that you can be, the more honored and revered as a woman that you can be. And I'm curious how this has impacted you, or whether it's impacted you, and maybe how it showed up. How do you kind of reconcile being a modern day Latina? And this kind of goes back to some of those values again, too. How do you reconcile being a modern day Latina and, having kind of the traditional expectations of you as a woman? And I know that's a really big question. So
who wants that one first is the question.
I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead, Laura.
For me, it is taking on too much. I'm trying to be the martyr of the group, apparently, when I do that. I'm always saying yes. I used to say yes a lot. Just put my head down and just say yes. Especially, a few years ago when we would do installs for, new system updates. Those would be over the weekend, and those would be overnight, sometimes 2 a.m. up to 3 a.m. And sometimes it's, may have not been fixed, and you have to, log back on the next night to try to fix it again. But I don't know. I thought I had to do it all myself at work. But now I know that there's support from my team, and not to be ashamed to ask for help. You can't do it alone. Just ask for help.
Yeah. So key. And I feel like many of us are taught to kind of like do it independently or keep things in the family, right? Or even in regards to like therapy, right? Like we don't bring our business outside, and there's still a lot of taboo even around things around therapy. And I've been very open in sharing that therapy for me is part of my self-care routine. I'm not going through any hardships, but I keep my therapist, kind of once a month just for check-ins and, just to keep my mental sanity. So being able to ask for help, whether that's at work or in our personal lives, is something that's really important and helps us have some of that, balance, if such a thing can exist. Vivian, it looked like you wanted to chime in here. Am I right?
I feel like it's such a big topic. I know Nicole was going to jump in, and
Yeah.
Nicole's kind of our resident podcast leader, so I'm going to make sure she can talk because she's just so insightful. No, I mean, I think it's something we've all talked about for sure. It's the feeling that, in a weird way, I think sometimes you're almost made to feel bad for liking that people need you. Like, in a way, there is that feeling of, oh, well, I know in deep down, like, my family needs me, or a little bit of, oh, I know the office might collapse if I'm not here. It's something about that I think feels empowering in ways. But to your point, I think it's on that flip side, though, is it's very easy to get lost in the feeling of being needed or needing to be that martyr. And oftentimes, I think just in our culture, we see that happen a lot, where we hear it with our moms and our aunts. And but yeah, no, that's it. I'll let Nicole go. I want to hear what she has to say.
All right, Nicole, you're up.
Well, thank you. Y'all giving me way too much credit, but I appreciate it. I think a lot of it is learning boundaries. I'm a big proponent of creating those boundaries and saying and when enough is enough. I see it. I react a lot to my family and them needing things. So I'll be the first one to jump and then say, wait a minute, I've got to rethink this. I'm not available to go pick up the boys, or and I don't do it often. Or wait a minute, I can schedule something, but I need advance notice. I mean, I work full time. I have a wonderful leadership group that allows me some, flexibility and things like that. But I also am going, in the middle of my grad school and saying, "Hey, I can't make this baseball game. I've got a paper to write." um, things like that, kind of help in that overcommitment piece, but it's very easy to fall into those traps. Or you get that phone call at 3 a.m. Mom doesn't feel good. Okay, well, has she taken medicine? What's going on? Getting more information before just flying over to the house, things like that. But definitely a thing.
Yeah. And it's like, I about a month ago or so, actually maybe a little longer, earlier this summer, I held a workshop and it was called Boundaries Are Bonita. And it was because this topic comes up so much within the Latina community, right? Is like doing everything for everyone else and feeling burnt out and frustrated and feeling, exhausted and feeling unfulfilled, right? And so often we're putting everyone else first. It's like we need to give ourselves permission to do things that, light us up. We need to give ourselves permission to rest, and part of that is really establishing those boundaries and knowing it's okay. But it is a very difficult thing, especially if you grew up in a family never having boundaries. And I know I come from a family, very, very, very loving family.
I feel like all of us are like,
I come from a very loving family, but there are no boundaries, no boundaries whatsoever. It's still, something that I'm 45 and I still sometimes have to, I don't think I struggle as much as much anymore. It's become much easier, but in the beginning it was really difficult, was establishing, boundaries and saying no, and then not feeling guilty about it was the other thing.
And not feeling selfish. It's the worst part.
It's the worst.
Right?
It's so
Like,
hard.
yeah, exactly. It is. It's
We all grew up with it.
So what advice do you have for doing that? Like, what advice would you give other, now you are where you are in your journey, you're kind of learning more, you have more self-awareness. What advice would you give to others that really struggle with boundaries?
Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Saying no and being okay with it is okay. That's really the simplest way I can put it.
I agree with you, Nicole. I'm being trying to practice more saying no. I know it sounds horrible, but I need to
Doesn't
tell
sound
you,
horrible. Don't apologize for it.
You're so right.
is the right
It is
thing to do.
okay.
Sometimes I look at, I'm like, why I just don't say no if I cannot do it? And then I need to reflect it. Okay, what happened to me? So no, I'm agree with Nicole. Is say no and establish the boundary and be strong about it.
Yeah. Rebecca, who's listening, says it's the hardest thing for me. And then Angela says, yes, I struggle with boundaries. My cup feels empty, but I know it has to do with no boundaries. Yeah. So often, like I always say, like we have to fill our own cup, right? First. And then from the overflow is what we give, but we can't just keep pouring out, right? It's just like the gas tank run on empty.
Well, here's the thing. We talk about saying no, but really we're saying yes to ourselves. If you need a positive spin on it, that's what it is. You're saying yes to yourself.
Yeah.
I have
Love
to
that.
say that one thing about the cultural shock that I had, it was people saying no to me. Like, and to simple things, I was going to Peru for vacation, so I would bring a lot of sweets and alfajores to share with everyone. And people would say, "I don't want sugar, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you."
You're like,
I
what?
would be like, "Oh my gosh, what? These people are mean." Like feeling like it was something personal, right? So through the years, I had to learn that this is, not something that is, they are not saying no to me. They are saying no to this. But with that helped me to do the same. Like when I don't want something, say no without feeling, guilty, and trying to be more assertive. And I think that has been a cultural shock for my family. When I say no, they are like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yes, no." And I try not to just do more. It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
But they are, they are learning as well. That is not. It's not that I don't love them. It's just I cannot do it. That I cannot do that right now.
Yes.
But
And-
it's hard, as Rebecca said. Like it's pretty hard. But I think this culture has taught me that.
Yeah, definitely. Rebecca says, I'm saying yes to myself and mental health. Yes. And we can all applaud that because that's so important. Yeah. It looked like there was someone else who was going to say something. Was it you, Laura?
Yeah. So along with, making yourself uncomfortable, and the thing is, you have to overcome it. My advice would be network, get to know others, become familiar with small talk. And I know a lot of people don't like small talk, but it's the way that you bond with your team. With my team, since I've been at this company, the thing to watch is Game of Thrones, Star Wars. With Star Wars, I didn't grow up watching Star Wars. I grew up watching India Maria movies. So I I had to learn the culture. But yeah, with that helped me, get more familiar and practice my small talk just by learning the American culture.
Yeah. We're Marvel fans over here in this household. So everything is superheroes. Vivian.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I agree. No.
I saw you come off mute, so I didn't know if you had something to say. So there's another topic that comes up a lot, and all of you are at different places in your career, have gone through different experiences, but the topic that I hear come up so often is the one of imposter syndrome. And I would say 90% of people that reach out to me are reaching out to me, in terms of coaching is regarding imposter syndrome. Either they've started a new role, they want to apply for a new role. Even if it's regarding personal branding and developing their brand online, they're worried about what other people might think of them or what they'll say. What is, here's my question. It's kind of two parts. One is like, have you experienced imposter syndrome? And how have you overcome it? Before we go there, I just want to say that Angela says, guilt is the hardest part. Being the oldest daughter, I'm called for everything. It's tough to balance family and working in tech. Definitely. Yeah. I feel you, Angela. Come to my Boundaries, our Bonita workshop. I'm going to host it again this fall. So be on the lookout because we'll talk more about boundaries then. But so I just want to open up to the panel. Have you experienced imposter syndrome and how have you worked through it?
I would say for me, I work on it a lot of the time, especially working from home. I think about it, and it's kind of a little hard with not having your team around unless you have a meeting. But once I step into the headquarters building, that's when I tell myself, you made it here, Laura. You were determined to come here, and be proud of yourself. So I've always been so critical of myself, and just you know just not put my head down and not really speak up. But yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. So some like positive self-talk and then just showing up.
Yep.
Is what I'm hearing. Yeah. Sidaida, I'm curious to hear from you, just with your experience, having been raised and grown up in Puerto Rico, and then coming and working in North Carolina. I'm not sure if that's what is your first place, but how have you experienced imposter syndrome, and how have you overcome that?
Yes, Ruby, I experience because I'm very critical, like Laura said. I'm very critical with my work. I always try to hit all in the resumes or in the job description. 10 bullets. I need to meet 10 bullets perfectly. I need to be enough. So it's this additional pressure that, if you think about it, nobody else put it except us. I don't know if it's cultural. I don't know if it's woman thing. I'm still figure out, but it's just there. And I've been doing better. I'm not telling you that I'm in the point that I will like it, because I'm still working on it, like every day and every time that I have opportunity. But something that helped me is I have mentors, not only for the professional part, but like you mentioned, a therapist or somebody that you have these conversations very honest, very genuine, and these people are been telling me, no, you have the skills. Why you are doubt yourself? See where you are right now in your career and in your professional and in your personal life. Why you are second guess? And sometimes challenge me, why you are thinking this, so make me think, well, really, I have all the requirements, what I'm thinking that I cannot able to do it. So I think that is very hard. I don't know if it's the way that I grow up, that I still is in my mind, like all you say, work hard, just be a team member. You don't need to be brag about your work. The people going to notice that, but no, it's not like that. You need to speak about your work. You need to show up, and every day is kind of an interview. Every day is your presentation. You work hard, but yes, sometimes you need to say it, because not everybody know the details. Not everybody, a different circumstance. So that's the way that I'm still working on it. I'm not telling you it's a work in progress
Yeah.
right now with me.
And thank you for sharing that, because that's so often when we talk about, when we have these conversations, it is really, we're always evolving. And so things are changing, and where we were last year might not be where we are now, but that's a good sign, because that means that we are actually growing. We're moving forward. We're getting out of our comfort zone. And I think what you said is really important too, is, finding a support community, right? Like finding like-minded people, finding people who maybe when you don't see it for yourself, they see it in you. When I went for my master's, like the people I hung around with in high school, to be honest, like, or not even high school, just in general, like it was different. I didn't see people traveling all over the world. I didn't see people going out and getting their master's degrees. Like, so when I considered getting my master's degree, like I didn't even think I didn't really know if I was smart enough. That was like the imposter syndrome I was dealing with. Like, am I smart enough? Like, can I do this? And I had one friend. She was a little older than me, and she was successful in her career, and she was kind of like a big sister to me, kind of unofficial mentor. And all she said to me was like, Ruby, I believe in you. I believe you could do this. And that was enough for me to like push forward and do it. And you know what? I got that master's degree. And to this day, it still ends up being some of the most impactful words. Like when I think I can't do it, I can literally like hear her voice just reminding me like, I believe in you. You got this. You can do it. Keep going, you know? So, Paula, Nicole, Vivian, what about for you? How have you dealt with imposter syndrome and how have you overcome it?
Yeah, I can go. Definitely. Yes, is the short answer. No, I wanted to say something about what Laura said, though, which I think is so important when we talk about imposter syndrome. With the way that we're changing how we work, too, working from home, I just think it's created this shift, too, in the way that we receive affirmation in the workplace. Because I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I'm big on, yes, like the workplace connection in person and the communication. But I found that if I didn't hear from someone, you know, if a few days went by and I didn't feel like I had heard any kind of verbal affirmation that I was doing what I was supposed to or a good job. I mean, I think eventually kind of the shift in mindset is more so if you're not hearing anything, you're probably doing well. That's kind of how at least my thing I keep telling myself is, it's I don't need to always get that positive validation. And I think that's a part of, growing up, but also just within the workplace, I think you learn as you kind of progress that that's not necessarily a part or it shouldn't necessarily be an indication of how well or how bad you're doing at your job. And so for me, at least, like Laura, when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's something I struggled with the work from home element, is not feeling I could get that in person obvious indicator of, oh, we're okay, this is going well. That was kind of tough, I think, to navigate at first. I mean, for advice, I'm more so listening to you guys. I think that's something everybody struggles with. But the self-affirmation, I think, is a big piece. Just reminders to yourself that, you're doing your best. You're doing as good as you can. You can always improve, but you're just putting your best foot out there, and that's the best you can do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can go and just Laura and Vivian all share things that just reminded me things about my job, because yes, I guess for what I'm hearing, we all deal with that. Doesn't matter how, if you get your master's, PhD, you always have that. I don't know if it's lack of confidence, but I had the same experience as Ruby, because I deal with this syndrome frequently, that I have to talk to a friend, and my friend says, look what you have been through to be here in this job, to be here today. So I need to remind that to myself all the time. But also what I ask myself is the environment fostering our imposter syndrome, or is it helping that we are not getting the promotion, we are not getting the raise, that also, I guess, affects our confidence and make us think, okay, we don't probably deserve that. We are not doing enough. But something that Vivian shared about, I'll say appreciation, it's something that in my work we are trying to push a lot for appreciation. So last week we did, and I did this event like 3 years ago as part of the Latino Employee Resource Group event, where we brought a facilitator from the 5 languages of appreciation. I don't know if you have read that book, but it's 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. So even though they are similar to the 5 love languages, it's kind of different because the setting is the workplace. So we all want to be recognized and appreciated in different ways, right? Words of affirmation for Vivian. For me, it's quality time. You can tell me many things, but if you don't listen to me, you don't spend time with me, I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel you value my job, my work, what I'm doing. So I think that's something good. So in this case, I would say the environment can foster that we feel that way, but also can help, that we all feel appreciated in some way. Learning how everyone in my team, in my group, receive appreciation, how they want to receive that appreciation, not how I want to give it. Because for me, it's quality time, but for Vivian, it's worth of appreciation. I would say, let's spend time together. And Vivian said, no, I want you to tell me how great.
I'm like, do you like me though? I don't understand.
I wanted to share that.
Thank you.
No, Bella, that's great because we just went through that at work where we took the quiz, and I'm bilingual. It's a funny thing. I've never been bilingual in my life, but I need words of affirmation or quality time, or quality time. So I definitely hear what you're speaking there. And I feel more energized when I actually have the quality time, and I think that's where I really truly lean into. In terms of imposter syndrome, it's really taken a lot for me to get to this point in my career and in who I am as a person, confidence wise, and things like that. Um, I I've struggled with that. I have an amazing partner that continuously calls me their little badass, because I don't recognize the things that I have done. I've always kind of shied away from, well, people are asking me a bunch of questions. They come to me as that unofficial mentor, things like that. And I was like, but why? It was always, but why?
Because you're a badass Latina leader.
Thank you. um, but it, it's something that I have really kind of said, okay, you know what? This is my moment to say, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And if I fail, I learn from it. Um, so that's my imposter syndrome story, if you would.
Yeah. I love that. Yes, I am. Like that's something that I think we can all embrace. And I heard so much good feedback. I heard positive self-talk, being surrounding yourself with like positive community that's going to lift you up. Like just taking initiative to work through it and acknowledge it. And what a big theme that I heard in this too is like, it's part of growth, right? Paula, you brought up, the question, and I love this question, is like, how is our environment fostering, imposter syndrome to some degree? And like, but on the flip side, because there is that there, I do believe that imposter syndrome sometimes exists because of like systemic barriers, right, and institutions. But then the flip side is that sometimes just in growth, we're going to feel imposter syndrome, because if we're moving, for example, from one role to another role that we've never been in before, we're going to feel out of our comfort zone. And so it's going to feel like, oh, do I belong here? And knowing that it's okay to feel that, and that's a natural part of it. And leaders, that's like leaders at every level, even at C-suite level, this is something they deal with, is the feelings of imposter syndrome, right? But it's, also having the mindset for us individually that, yes, I can do this. And I'm going to just throw in a shameless plug. The hypnotherapy is one of the ways that you can break through imposter syndrome. So if you want an imposter syndrome breakthrough, reach out to me, but that's a shameless plug. Okay. I want to, I know we're kind of at the end of our time almost. And one of the last questions that I have for you, and to our listener, so that our listeners can, get from you, is what advice would you give to upcoming Latina leaders when it comes to embracing their identity at work? And we're talking about Latina, identity, or Hispanic identity, or how, it's so personal. But whatever identity it could be, having a disability, LGBTQ, there's sometimes we think about identity just in one thing, but there's a lot of times there's an intersectionality of identities too. So, but just what advice would you give to upcoming Latina leaders in embracing their identity in the workplace? And we'll just kind of do a quick round robin here. Don't all go at once.
Nicole, you go.
Okay, so Accept yourself. Be okay with who you are. Once you're okay with who you are, everybody else will fall in line.
Dang, you should have been last.
Yeah. Drop the mic right there. Come on.
And we're done.
All I was gonna say was it's okay to take up space. Like you're not in anybody's way.
Yes.
Own
Yes.
it.
I would say, well, I think we've said it before, but to be assertive, but not mean. In my family, you know, we're very loud people. We're very passionate. So I have to, I'm trying to steer away from the stereotype of Latinas being fiery and spicy. And I just want to, you know, just show that I can be a professional.
Yeah. And you can still be passionate, right?
I guess I'll go. One important part of my identity is my faith. So at the beginning, I was probably very shy to share about it, but I take my risk and I share, and I don't think I need to hide it. And so that doesn't also, it's not only about my faith, it's about who I am. So I felt that we need to take the risk, and if people, as Nicole says, people will go along with you if they want to, you know. Just be authentic who you are, and don't hide anything of your identity. Just be proud of it. And yeah.
I don't have much to say. You guys say everything. But I just think that you need to know who you are. If you know who you are, you will accept you with the good and then not so good. And the people you need to recognize is people that are going to accept you and people know. And it's okay. It's okay. And also speak up. We are doing a great job, but we need to continue to speak up.
Awesome. Great advice. Uh, you know, I think this conversation is so important. I feel like we could actually spend hours. I know I had other questions, and time is already up, but I think, you know, by having these ongoing conversations is so important. One is to realize that we're not alone in some of what we're going through, because especially as a first gen, it can feel very isolating, you know, navigating corporate America when we don't have the know-how, we don't have the network, we don't even have the language sometimes for what we're experiencing. And so I think having these conversations are really important so that we can realize, okay, we're not in this alone. We have each other, we can lean on each other, we can learn from each other. And let's see, there's Angela says, you're all jefas. Love this conversation with the awesome panel of Latinas. Look forward to future discussions. So, you know, I think it's so important to keep having this conversation, to realize that our experiences, while we might all, you know, consider ourselves Latinas, our experiences and our backgrounds are all very unique and different. And with that, it is not a detriment, right? It is not a weakness, but instead that is something that really gives us strength. It really gives us power. And, you know, individually, when we embrace our, you know, to what Nicole and Zedaida said, is like, when we really embrace ourselves and have that self-validation first, that's so important, because then we can go confidently in the world, doing what we're meant to do, making impact, you know, creating legacies for our families. And so I appreciate you all. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for all those that engaged and listened in. We look forward to having future conversations. And if you want to be a guest of the Woman Warrior Wednesday live stream, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email or connect with me. And I'd love to talk with you and get to know you. But thank you to all of you amazing women for bringing your experience and expertise and just your hearts to today's episode. So we will see you all later, and catch us in 2 weeks. We'll be back. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruby.
Thank you, Ruby.
Bye.
Bye.